Hello and welcome to Geek Spiel on air. I was going to say online. Of course, we're online. My name is Chris Walters, and I'm here with a couple of folks tonight. Let's start off with introductions. Gil, you want to start us off?
Start us off. So, I'm Gil Mello, the dwarf token. Love to play board game. I guess that's it. That's why I'm here, right?
Yeah, right.
And I'm hoping to learn some. I play a little bit of RPG, and hoping to learn some myself tonight.
Okay, great.
I'm excited about this topic. I'm very new to the role-playing game.
Okay, so hopefully we have some info to share. You might also decide that Steve and I, who we quote-unquote are calling our pros tonight, might not have as much info as you really think. Let's then switch to our just absolutely fresh player, Chris Cornell, aka Digital Carnage. Chris, say hello.
Hello, everyone. As Chris mentioned, my experience with D&D or RPGs is limited to exclusively a fresh play of Tomb of Annihilation. So yeah, that's it. I was told it's D&D light.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, for sure. Then we've got Steve. Steve, go ahead, and you're new to the show, both Table Crashers and to Geek Spiel on air.
Yes, that's correct. I've been working with Matt at least for a little while to try to help see some of this come to fruition, but I have not been on the show yet.
All right, we're glad to have you. And what's your RPG experience?
I've been playing quite a while. I started as a kid back in '79. I learned from my older brother. Shortly after the first Dungeon Master's Guide came out, I was exposed to it. And by '81, I had my own friends in like second or third grade playing D&D.
All right. So when we're talking like Stranger Things style D&D here,
yes,
you live up to the stereotype there for sure.
Yes, I remember the Satanic Panic and all of that stuff that went down back then.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so just to start us off again, Geek Spiel on Air is a podcast, VOD type Twitch stream. All we're here to do is talk about subjects interacting with tabletop RPGs and tabletop board games. So we've got a couple of shows already. Come check us out. We're here on Sundays, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. Big pieces of push is Geek Spiel is a PG-13 stream. We talk about being inclusive and relatable to all folks. And we're just here to live, play, and enjoy board games and tabletop RPGs. Make sure you join our Discord, because that's where we do some of the magic that we have going on, whether that's talking about tournaments, being on the show, or even just pickup games. That's one of the beautiful things about Discord, is that if you have a free night and you just want to play a game on Tabletop Simulator, jump on and let's play. Let's shout it out to folks and let's say you're interested. The thing about Geek Spiel on Air is we're a little different. We're on Twitch, and one of the beautiful things about that is you can interact with us. And so all of us got our Twitch chats pulled up and we're looking at them. So make sure that you're chatting any questions. Feel free, if we pose a question to the panelists, to throw an answer out there as well. We want to hear from you, and that's the beauty of it being live. So last week, we had Table Crashers, which was pretty awesome. We played with Angela out of the UK, Goblin Goblins. And Chris, you were on the show with us. How was Goblin Goblins for you?
Goblin Goblins was a lot of fun. It's a very unique play system. We actually had it all set up as a pizza party, which was pretty cool. You quite literally put your cards out on a plate. You try to collect these different sets and make sure that your opponents, don't eat them, or you make them eat the bad things. It was a very interesting gameplay. It's a unique system from what I can tell.
Right. And for a game that I think we kind of think of these set collecting games as super easy to pull off, and there was a level of intricacy with Goblin Goblins that I really liked. I love a game with kind of like this character variation aspect to it. Each one has their own like positive and negatives, and I even if it's something that's like 3 lines like Goblin Goblins were, it was fun to just have like one special ability and some things you liked and things you didn't. So there were some bonuses here and some negatives here, and you wanted to avoid some and get others. So Yeah, no, it was great. She stayed with us a long time. She was definitely, as our producer said, one tired Brit by the end of the show. But
Most
yeah, it was
definitely.
really exciting. Another thing I want to talk about is so we're pretty excited because over the past week we've had two very special Kickstarter slash kind of projects get funded. Projects that were amazingly successful, and we're so glad that they kind of made it in and got the publicity they need. But they're games that we've been able to play here on Table Crashers, and so both Royal with Jason and Alicia, folks who are part of the Discord, have been helping us out a lot. Jason's been on the show several times. Alicia's been on the show a couple of times, and so y'all have gotten to see them. Their Royal got funded today, right? Earlier this morning.
Early this morning, about 8:00 Eastern.
Yeah, so we got that, and that they had a couple of days left, so they're still going strong. So make sure that if you're with us tonight and you have a chance, you haven't backed it yet, go back it because it's still open. And then Emma, who actually was one of my favorite guests right now because she made me a part of her game, is also got backed in the last 24 hours. And so Quirk Legends got backed. Her expansion for Quirk, which is already a successful Kickstarter. So yeah, it's really exciting to see both of those projects get funded. Projects that clearly they did many things on their own. But we, I think here on Geek Spiel, take a little bit of pride of helping them achieve their goal. Hopefully, maybe we made it worse, but having a good time, play their games, and build some new contacts and friends along the process. And that's what it's all about. So shout out to both parties there, and glad your pieces got fun. And many of us on Geek Spiel have backed these projects. So yeah, we're excited to have them in person and see what they look like. So
it's interesting with Emma's project though. Like she's actually already, the game is very similar. It's just like you said, it's an expansion, and she's already got it out available. She's been selling it small batch style for quite a while now, and she's just using the Kickstarter to get that mass production. So it's pretty cool that she was able to get that done.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And again, if you haven't seen #PartyHorse, go see some of our earlier episodes of Table Crashers, and you'll get to, exactly. Chris Cornell's showing it off for us. You'll get to know what that's about. So we're going to hop into what our topic for the day is, which is RPGs, tabletop RPGs. And so everyone got to talk about their experience. I didn't get to talk about mine. So I've been playing for several years and a couple of different platforms. I wouldn't by anywhere say that I'm close to playing since 79 like Steve has, but I definitely have been going for a while, and I've got a couple of in-person games, and so I got a little bit of experience. I've done both sides, the player and the GM, and so being able to talk about what it's like to do both will be exciting as well. So let's start us off with what do you like about tabletop RPGs? What's important to you in a tabletop RPG? What's your favorite or fondest moment? Steve, do you want to start us off since you've been playing for a little while?
Sure. Which one of those questions should I start with?
Pick and choose. Go with it. Why don't you? What's your favorite part about tabletop RPGs?
Favorite part has changed actually over time, which you might imagine. As a kid, it was something to do at recess or after school or weekends or what have it to, use your imagination with friends and develop something that hadn't been seen before.
Yeah.
We obviously took influences from books and from movies, but back then, at least in the late 70s, early 80s, it was mostly from books. The home video market was just emerging, so that was a different time. And like I said, over time, it's changed. Today, it's fun to game with folks face to face. I've done some online as well through Roll20. But I find it more rewarding to be face-to-face with folks. There's just something more personal to it than playing, say, video games or MMOs or something like that with folks. So the shared storytelling, I guess, is the fun part.
Okay, so that's your favorite aspect is the story, the shared storytelling?
Well, the game doesn't belong to just one person. So the GM can make stuff and helps kind of act as a director, but if you're not being railroaded, which good GMs avoid, everyone gets to add a little bit to the game and it grows from there. So I think that's my favorite favorite part.
All right, cool. Gil, what do you have for us? What's your favorite part about tabletop RPGs?
Here's a funny fact. I've never played face-to-face. So 3 campaigns, all of them for Roll20. Because what happened to me is I was listening to the Lords of the Dungeons. I think it's run by the Secret Cabal guys. And on their Facebook, I post, I'm 40 years old and never played RPG. I always want to give a shot. And it was, a comment. And all of a sudden, I get a bunch of people contacting me, say, "Hey, we love to get some new players in." And I said, "Sure." And so I joined the Roll20. And the way we don't use the Hangout from the Roll20. We run a separate Hangout, and so we kind of see each other. But it's been a year where we did a short campaign first, and then there's 2 campaigns that I'm part now that been run for about a year now, and I'm having a blast, like building characters, making voices and stuff like that. Because as I said before, like we're talking before this, for me at that point my role play experience was Fiasco, or I played a little. There was a those end of the world series, the zombie apocalypse and things like that. So it was much more involved. I think there's disadvantages and advantages. Like I play very experienced players, like rolling and stuff. It's very natural to them. I think that comes to experience. But at this generation, that was very easy for me to go hunt for information and learn out of the internet and stuff like this. I think it was much quicker for me to get into the role-playing game because of technology. And that's why I always tell people, don't bash technology too much. But at the same time, I'm looking forward. We're going to start a group of friends. We're going to start a campaign. I'm really want to do the whole analog thing, looking at people actually chucking dice, which I love.
Right. Scribble on paper for a little while.
And I think, I'm 46 years old. So my message says it's never late to start. I'm having a blast. I had no idea how much fun was to play RPGs, and I always read R.A. Salvatore and Ed Greenwood, so I was familiar with the world too. I didn't have to learn everything about the Dungeons and Dragons world and things like that. But still, there was a learning curve there, but it was not as hard as I thought. And I think for me, I don't know, but my perception is it goes a lot. The group is very important, and little things like some groups cussing a lot. And if you're not the kind of person that cussing, it might be uncomfortable for you, and the other way around. And or like people take it very serious. Some people are more relaxed. I think it's the secret. It's finding the correct group for you. There's no right or wrong, but I think if you get pushed into a group that might not be, kind of homogen like you are, or has some similarities, I think it might be a little harder. And I was lucky enough that I got into a group that were very fun, willing to help, and I spend a bunch of money buying books now and RPGs and stuff like that.
Right, for sure. Yeah, Gil, I think you made an important point there, and it is really. I mean, board gaming groups. I think, Mina, you want to play games with people you like, right? You want someone who's at a similar. You don't want someone who takes it too seriously and then, gets ruined friendships for weeks afterwards and doesn't want to talk to you. If you beat them too bad or whatever. There's some of that, but I do think with RPGs in particular, you got to be. If someone gets really into voices and character and enacting and role playing and RPing some of that, well, role playing and RP is the same thing, but just really getting into the story aspect, and then you have another group, a part of the group that's super combat heavy and they just want to fight things the entire time. It really does become, I think, in some ways divisive. It's not enjoyable for everyone. There's lull points where someone's like, okay, cool, I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs because coming up with a story is really not exciting to me. But then then you're in combat, someone's like, oh, I love combat, and then someone's like, yeah, I could do without it. So I really do think you've kind of hit a point there that that group dynamic is really important.
One thing that I'm curious is like you and Steve have played for so long, and I know there's sometimes you just use pure imagination, right? You write off of a script or something, and you can also go to the other end and get a bunch of miniatures and stuff. Like, how is it like for you to play this development, or do you still enjoy both playing with miniatures and without, or there's like a preference that people or you guys personally would lean towards nowadays?
I do both. I have a group, my in-person group. Some of them really love miniatures. They're all about like getting the new mini for each character and painting them up. And I still have the same Dwarven Bard mini that I've been using for like years, and I'm playing like a Dragonborn Druid right now. So like clearly not the same mini. And I'm a lot into the RPing. I'm all about the story. And so for me, kind of that term theater of the mind is really big. Like, I don't need a playmat. Like, I don't need someone to say, oh, okay, well, I'm exactly, 35 feet away. Sometimes some of that minutia gets a little too much for me. But I want to be something that's got not just combat heavy, but is also, really letting me kind of pick my character and, like you said, kind of create that, use my imagination to create that persona, and then just let it ride. I mean, one of my favorite memories is the first time I joined this in-person group. I had never played before, and so like I didn't have a character sheet. Like, I got the player's handbook like 5 minutes before I showed up at our local gaming shop. Like, I got a set of D20s dice, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And my dungeon master was just like, hey, we'll help you out. And so they got there, but it was me and this other guy. We were both new to this group. It was there was 4 or 5 people who'd played for a while. We just kind of hopped in, and they were mid campaign. They were playing Out of the Abyss, and he just started. The DM just started us saying, and randomly down this like offshoot of a cave, there's 2 people walking through, and I was a half orc, and he was a halfling, and we made this kind of scenario that I would carry him around in my baby Bjorn. Like, I was just this big half orc with this like little halfling bossing me around and telling him like I was the muscle and he was the brains. And, we came up with that. We'd never met each other. We just came up with it out of the fly. And my gosh, it was a lot of fun. So, I'm all about the story. I think that's the most important point for me. But I could do both, and I like both. I mean, sometimes it is fun to be like, oh, cool. Like, especially if someone gets into creating the landscapes and the castles and the, getting to see folks, paint their minis and get really excited about it. Jason in chat, Dr. Zero said, I'm a mini hoarder. Getting having their own mini is really important. And, that's a lot of fun. So what about you, Steve? What's your preference?
I have a similar to you. Back when we were teenagers, my friends. Let me back up one step before that. When learning to play, we didn't use miniatures, mostly because we were in elementary school and couldn't afford to buy stuff like that. Probably it wasn't safe for our age either, since they were still made of lead back then. But as a teenager, I got exposed to other friends that had miniatures, and we found that when we introduced those to our tabletop, it would override the game. People became too engrossed in moving their piece of metal around, and it really detracted and slowed down the game. And we kind of labeled that playing miniatures instead of playing D&D. So I never grew too warmly to them. I've played miniature games, war games, and they're great for that. I love maps. I think that's very important. The theater of the mind is great for the majority of the game, but when you slow it down to a scale, whether you're in combat or having to make rolls of any type, it certainly does help if there's something a little more definitive. So I do like maps. I could live without having to put miniatures on them.
Okay. Gotcha. Gil, does that answer your question?
Oh, it does. Yes. And as I said, I'm looking forward to try to, either way, I've learned a lot this year, and I think I became an RPG player now. for a while there, I was on the fence, but yeah, this mainly those last 3 months, I really got into it, and that's fun. Yeah, I have to say, I'm gonna say something here too. I'm gonna admit perceive the RPG community as, I don't know if the snobby is the right word, or like not very welcoming. Mainly when you're not been playing forever, like expecting you to know whatever, grumpy, like. And I was totally wrong. It was nothing like that. It was very receptive and very helpful. So yeah, if you are like I was and perceive people that play RPG to be a close club, it's not. I had a really nice welcome. Yeah, it really helped me to get into it.
I thought that too when I got started. It was one of the barriers that took me so long to do that. Is I'm not going to know anything, and they're going to have to hold my hand, and they're not going to want to do that. And so it was nice to, again, I think it's also about, did you get the right group? And I found a pretty fortunate group. So yeah, Gil, I'm excited for you to be able to play in person. I think your first time with minis, getting that experience is always fun. So I'm excited for you. Chris, we've left you out of this conversation.
I don't have a whole lot to input on this one. So.
Well, let's ask you this: what are you most excited about to jump in on some tabletop RPGs? Like, what are you most looking forward to? What do you think it's going to be like? We'll smash your hope and dreams if you're wrong.
Well, honestly, it's the physical aspect of it. I want to be. Like, I have a couple groups of friends that, I've recently found out that they do play, RPGs and stuff like that, specifically D&D. But I want to get out on the table, on a nice neoprene mat and just throw some dice. I love seeing. I hate. It's kind of counteractive because I hate RNG, but yet I'm okay with dice rolls. Like, if I'm actually in control of the die, I can. I'm okay with that. I'll play it as the die lies, but. Like I had a little bit of fun playing Tomb of Annihilation the other day, and I was like, okay, I get D&D light, but at the same point, like, most everything's already decided for you. You have a very specific set of rules that you have to stick to, and that was fun. But now I really want more.
Right.
I want to do a lot more with it. So I guess just like the building the friendships and the camaraderie and stuff that I see happening with it. I have a couple friends that I found that I never knew they were even into this, and here they are every Friday night they have a D&D session. I'm like, why didn't you guys tell me about
this? Right. Why are you holding out on me?
Right.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, I definitely feel that for sure. Switching up, I'm gonna hop on our Twitter poll real quick. So this week we asked the Twitterverse what were their favorite / primary tabletop RPGs. We gave a couple of options. 71% put D&D and Pathfinder. 0% had Fate, so that's interesting. 21% had Star Wars, and then 8% had other, but didn't mention kind of, again, what those were. And Gil, you mentioned Fiasco earlier.
Yeah, Fiasco and End of the World. I think End of the World is one that is very popular right now. It's like a one-shot scenario.
Yeah, no, so again, I'm the story guy. I loved creating a character and doing that. And I think when everyone thinks RPGs, they think of the D20 system, like Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons. Like, that's the system everyone knows, right? That's the pure, like, you're picking up a chunk of dice and you're throwing it and you're having a good time with all the stats and so on. But I started experimenting a little bit with some different engines, and we started playing a little bit. I don't think it ever got off on the show, but we started playing with a little bit of Star Wars, Force and Destiny. That was a cool kind of advantage-disadvantage system. I like that. Fiasco was great, and especially for a storyteller. If you're not familiar with the system, it's essentially a bunch of pages of connections. And
you build relationships,
right. You build relationships with the other people at the table, and then you essentially tell the story. And based on how well you tell the story, people essentially vote you up in positives and negatives. And it's just so much fun to be able to, see if you can charm the group you're with and kind of get them excited about the story you're telling. And again, I love when I get into D&D, creating a backstory for my character and having like, how does everyone fit in. And Fiasco filled that need for me in a platform I didn't think it would, and it was a lot of fun. So, Gil, what did you think about some of those other systems?
I liked it. I think it was fun because it was one-shot thing. Because I think there's another big obstacle is commitment of time, right? Like I can only play RPGs right now because of Roll20. I travel for work 20 weeks out of the year. So I can just get in the evening, sit at my hotel, enjoy. So that gets a little difficult once you have a group, and then you have to meet at somebody's house and all that. And I think those short systems help you at least to get your toes wet a little bit. And I think they can be fun. I think they're very group dependent. I think they're great, but you can't force into the group.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would say the End of the World series. I think there's the zombie apocalypse, nuclear. I try to remember what the like space invasion kind of thing. I think those are better. Fiasco. I think Fiasco. You really have to. It's fun if everybody really gets into the character because
I agree.
You might be sister and brother or married or depending.
Right, and, rivals and
so you need to have a level of comfort of how you're going to interact with that person that you're going to create that relationship. That might not be as heavy on some of the other system, but yeah, I don't know. Fiasco has been around for quite a long time, so
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Fire there.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting piece, which is I think everyone thinks when they think of like a D&D Pathfinder, like a tabletop RPG, they think of the groups that meet every week, that again get around and they like show up at someone's house. And I think Steve's kind of I brought up the oh gosh, now I can't think of it. Stranger Things reference, but like a bunch of people just showing up at someone's house. Everyone's got snacks, like just like hanging out and continuing a story. But I'm really seeing these, D&D did it with Adventurers League. These kind of like one-off, 1 act, 2 acts. You get together for a couple of hours and you just do something different. And I've seen a lot of new groups develop long-term campaigns from kind of this like, oh, we got together a couple times and we played. We really liked playing together. And now we kind of strung all those little mini episodes into one big episode. And that seemed like a lot of fun to me. I don't know if anyone else has kind of seen that happen or preference over the past, their experience.
I've kind of seen that and the exact opposite. I was in a group that was playing Traveler, actually the Little Black Books, when we started, and we're playing for over 3 years. The group dynamic kept changing because people kept dropping out and we get new players. So it wasn't one long campaign. The GM kept kind of starting us over. But after a while, it kind of settled in that there were 3 or 4 of us that stayed fairly permanent. And rather than burn out that GM, we decided to try to run different RPGs with the idea of something that would be a little more episodic, that we could play maybe 4 to 6 sessions before moving on to the next game. And that's where we picked up things like Apocalypse World, mixed in some Fate and some Savage Worlds for stuff like that.
Yeah. Steve, what was your we kind of missed you on that what other systems question. What was one of your favorite systems outside of maybe the traditional D&D Pathfinder D20 system?
Oh, wow. Well, my history being as long as it is, there's been a few. Like I said, I started with AD&D and I played almost pretty much every edition of D&D, but back then I was exposed to other games like Car Wars, which isn't so much an RPG, but we treated it as one because it was available in the same places.
Right.
The James Bond 007 role-playing game by Victory Games was amazing. I would play that today if I could actually find players. Played a little bit of Star Frontiers, played a lot of Champions, and from that, other things in the fantasy. That was when the Hero system was not a system. Hero was the company that made Champions.
Right.
I got into the Palladium games through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, and played quite a few of those. Did some Villains and Vigilantes. But after D&D and Champions, I would say the next big love was Shadowrun when it came out in '89.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who collected RPGs back then because he had more money.
That's how it goes, right?
Yeah, we went and saw that in the store, and he said, "Hey, look at this." And I wasn't really into the art at the time, and saw Magic and Cyberware and thought it was dumb, and told him it was dumb, but he bought it anyway. Then he wanted me to read it, and I finally relented and read it, and thought that the setting was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in a game. So Shadowrun supplanted my D&D through the '90s.
Okay.
So of late, though, like I said, I've discovered Apocalypse World and Fate through Core, and played a little Fate Accelerated, and now even dipping our toe into Savage Worlds as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So only recently I got to play RuneQuest, which was a game from the '80s.
Yeah.
Between that and Traveler, they were ones that I hadn't really gotten into back then. So I started playing those around 2014, 2015.
Okay, and they've still held up 30 years later.
Absolutely. The newer Mongoose version. Well, we played the LBBs for Traveler, and they absolutely work. It's not that system heavy. As long as you don't mix in all of the books that they put out. Then there was quite a bit of power creep in the later books that they put out, like Mercenary and High Guard. They made the basic character generation not really up to snuff. But RuneQuest is completely playable, and there's newer rules for that. So we tried the original and then just moved on to RuneQuest 6 fairly quick. But yeah, both great games.
Yeah, awesome. I think one of the things that I always like to talk about when I talk about tabletop RPGs is the fantasy world. I think is really where, tabletop RPGs got their start. But what I've loved recently is how the fantasy world, from a purely like Dungeons and Dragon themed component, has really started to move away, and you've gotten some of these like post-apocalyptic, dystopian, modern breakdown. I mean, there's the pieces like Star Wars and all these others, and so it's not just the, again, D&D Pathfinder-esque platform. There's other, Fiasco again is another piece, is that you could literally have 100 different settings. It doesn't matter what setup it is. It's telling a story. I'm just trying to think. Will Wheaton's show, was it Tabletop?
Yes.
He did one, and now that the game is, I'm missing it completely, and I can't remember what it is. But they had one that was kind of like a bunch of kids, being like a little like alien sci-fi, kind of like a little bit of genetic-esque pieces. And now, again, I'm not making it sound fun at all. But they played it on the show for 2 weeks, and it was a lot of fun. Just, again, the different scene and a different storyline. And so that's what I love about RPGs, is you can, if you've got someone who's created enough to create a world, like, you can play any system in that time setting, and you've got a story that makes sense for the love of the players. If you're a cyberpunk fan, you can find something out there. And that, if you're a fantasy person, a sci-fi person, you can find something out there. That's what I really love about it.
I have a friend, his name Chris Whitman, and he does, for his birthday, he does a ChrisCon. He does a little small convention of games. And they ran, I didn't play, I just sat and watched while I was, just to get acquainted with what they're doing. So they were playing this scenario. They were in the city, and there's like all kind of crazy things, from bear to a guy in an axe, and trying to collect this artifact. And they didn't have any die roll. What they had one of those Jenga towers. So people would pull pieces from the Jenga tower, to do, so that the DM would figure out what happens after. Pull 2 pieces,
Really?
pull that.
Okay.
I thought that was really, really cool. I think Victor, as the guy that was running it, and So I thought that was an interesting take, a different, instead of having dice or cards, using a Jenga tower. That was kind of interesting. They were having fun.
I've seen folks incorporate different, like, again, get away from dice and use like a deck of cards and stuff like that, and that's kind of a fun little variation. Of course, you're completely making that stuff up, but
I think I have a picture of it. I'll post on the Discord channel so people can see it.
Okay, great. So I want to, again, this is my show with the help of everyone else, but it's my show, and so I like to do what I want to do. And one of those questions is, when I'm creating characters, gosh, it's one of my favorite parts. And I think Gil had mentioned it. It might have Gil or Steve. That, like, do you completely come up with a fresh character, or do you have an influence from like a famous book or whether it's D&D related or not? What are your influences for your story creation and for your characters? And for Chris, like, where do you think you're going to take it for? You haven't had any of this experience yet. So what are you looking at books and stuff? Are you coming up with your favorite movies and being like, I would love to put this character into a D&D realm?
Yeah, about that. I'm not actually even sure. Like, obviously, my favorite character is Deadpool. I mean, I have tattoo, I have everything. It's just like he's like an anti-hero. He's like an anti-hero, anti-villain. He's not quite a villain, not quite a hero, but yet he's somewhere in between. And so I kind of like that strategy and stuff. So honestly, if I had to create a character, which I will not have to, if I get to create a character, it's not a punishment. It's just a thing that I would love to do. I kind of would like to do something along that line, not really superpowers or anything like that, but walk a line of good and evil type thing.
Okay, so that anti-hero, maybe the vigilante hero, maybe as well, something like that.
Yeah, it's something similar to that. I'm not really sure, the character creation aspect of things, like what you get to choose from, or if you do get powers. I guess it really depends on what you're playing as to whether or not you have superpowers or anything like that. So.
Yeah, Chris, if you had to pick a type of character you'd want to play in a D&D campaign, are you the tanky fighter cleric up front? Are you the healer? Are you the ranged support? What do you think you're going to play?
Truthfully, because of I've played a lot of World of Warcraft and everything like that, and I've found that I prefer to be a supportive character or a ranged character. Okay. Something that I can either help from afar or dish out a ton of damage, but not be up in danger.
Okay. Yeah, one of my favorite classes. I never thought I was going to like it, and it's turned me on to support characters for sure. It's definitely the Bard in D&D 5e. And they just came out with the new kind of classes and stuff, and there's a couple of them that I just would want to play so bad. I always play a little bit of the drunken bard. My hero inspiration is Quoth from Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss series. If you all haven't read that one, it's fantastic. It's Patrick Rothfuss, who also is a big D&D person.
Hopefully he will ever write the last book one of those days, I almost forgot the series.
He keeps hinting that he's close, right?
He's bad.
I think they give him a hard time at every. If you're into D&D specifically, and you're looking for a podcast to follow, Acquisitions Incorporated from the Penny Arcade guys, they always show up on. They always have on a PAX main stage. Yeah, and Will Wheaton's shown up for a couple of them. Patrick Rothfuss is on a lot of those lately. They've kind of branched out and done some different things. But Chris Perkins is an amazing DM. He also does, let's see, is he Dice Camera Action? Yes. And Waffle Crew is his current group of folks. So they're a good group. And then, of course, Geek and Sundry with that crew is a pretty phenomenal group as well. So if you're looking for some Twitch and YouTube content of some folks who are playing that. But yeah, Patrick Rothfuss, phenomenal. And I played kind of a little bit of a character off of him because he's a musician he kind of is. in the book. And so yeah, no, definitely take that off a little bit. Gil, what's your who's your character inspiration? What kind of character do you like to play?
I had a funny experience. The first, and I don't know how Steve and you playing for that long can do that, but I have a really hard time let go my first character. I think even on the chat, somebody commented about developing a character, and I don't know if because it was my first character, my first love, and my logo is a dwarf and everything, so I had to get my first character. I built this dwarf fighter. And I had so much fun with it. And when the campaign ends, it was like hard for me to let it go. I wanted to drag him along to the next campaign, and people said, "No, you should try something." And so I got an elf, like a rogue, and then just a human. And I don't know. I thought the dwarf would be my thing forever, and now I'm in love with the elf, and I'm in love with the human character. It's just, I don't know. I think a lot to do with reading. I think since I read probably a fantasy book a month, so all that kind of influences me. And sometimes I try maybe too hard to input some of the things that those influence on my character. They don't always work.
Right.
Yeah, and but yeah, I think that's mostly from reading and fantasy and watching. I do like the whole science fiction and steampunk environment. That's the one thing I would love to try, some kind of a steampunk RPG where I could build a character that was more gear, like gadget related. That would be something that would
Gil, I'm down. Let me know. Like, steampunk is one of my favorites, so let me know if you find a group, and I'll join you for that for sure.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, no, going off the character creation, I also thought I when I played, back to Chris's statement of you play the World of Warcrafts, and I was always like the dwarf fighter or the paladin. I was always some type of bruiser character. The beard makes a lot of sense if you know me, to live in that dwarf life. But I also think that I always, with Volos and the new Dungeons and Dragon piece, being able to try like the different character classes and some of the like creature classes was actually a lot of fun. But I go back to, I'm playing a Dragonborn right now, and one of the things again I love about story pieces, we just played Storm King's Thunder, and now we're in the out of Tomb of Annihilation, and one of the last buddies who was at a different table played this Dragonborn, and he had this little lizard that was a part of his character sheet. It was just like a little lizard that followed him around. In the story, like, he was just going to have a pet lizard that he talked to. The lizard didn't talk back. The lizard had no magical powers. It's just a freaking lizard. And the table made it into this, like, the lizard was a familiar that had the essence of Bahamut, and, was all like this magical precedence, that was talking to him. And so when we started this new campaign, that old Dragonborn character was killed. And I started mine. I said that the lizard found me, and it made this connection with Bahamut, and Bahamut was testing me. And the lizard eats platinum pieces off my shoulder. Every once in a while, I'll feed him some platinum pieces, and he'll like give me guidance. And I don't know, it was so much fun to just have this random, it's literally a lizard. Like, it was supposed to be a lizard of this Dragonborn got hit in the head and had a concussion. And so thought that this lizard talked to him. And now it's become this, again, the essence of Bahamut, one of the most legendary dragons of ever. So, Steve, what is your typical character? What are your inspirations for your characters?
Well, this many years in, I'd have to say I've played quite a few characters, although the past 20 years have mostly been spent game mastering.
Okay.
But these days, when I get to make a character, I want it to be something different, to challenge me and to have fun with. I've never really been one to try to play the same character over and over in different games. That I don't know why that's never really appealed to me. I have friends that just play themselves in every game. Always have the same attitude, approach problems the same way, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's what they're comfortable with. It's what we come to accept, and we have some fun with that. But I try to stretch. I'm not an actor, but I do like to think what makes this character different than the others, and try to get into their head and have different mannerisms, different philosophies of life, and basically just try to have fun being someone else. I think that's kind of the point of role playing. So yeah, I've played all kinds of different characters. Growing up, I was mostly into rangers, the outdoorsy type people.
Right, the hunters.
Right, and played a lot of fighters and thieves or rogues. So I wanted to be upfront and stabbing things or avoiding being stabbed.
Right.
Basically,
still stabbing.
Right. Taking hits for the party, as it was. I played a paladin in AD&D for quite a long time, which was challenging because he worshipped a goddess of mercy, which is hard to be if you're lawful good, because that's definitely a more neutral good thing to be.
Right.
So it was a challenge, but it was fun, but it was very draining. After years of that, I don't really see wanting to do that again. I will say that in whether it's a fantasy game or a science fiction game, most of my characters, probably 90% plus, are all human, because it's something that's easier for me to identify with, I guess.
Yeah, I hear that.
Do you tend to DM a lot? Do you prefer to play a character, or you prefer to DM? Because it seems like involved, like the kind of person who would be leading and telling the story a lot.
Right. That's a very good question, Gil. Both is the actual answer. When I think I have a cool idea that I want to explore and share with folks, I want to GM. But when it's the only thing I do for a few years in a row, I want to at least have a game that I can get in as a player where I'm not running most of the show or coming up with the content, or the majority of the content. So I like both sides still. If I get into a game, and this has happened at least a few times, I have a bad habit of being invited to a game that doesn't go very well. I end up taking it over if it doesn't look like we're enjoying it as much as I think we should. Not in a hostile way. It's generally volunteered.
Right. Someone's looking to pass it off, and then
I get promoted to GM from there. There's no.
It seems like a lot of work
for yourself.
Right.
It does seem like a lot of work to DM. Like
it can be, but it depends on the game. Like for me, I could run a shadow run with no prep whatsoever. I played it enough. I'm familiar with the system, even though it's extremely rules heavy. And I just have ideas floating in my head. Certain games that require that you draw out maps and have things pre-planned, yes, that's a different,
for sure,
different thing. But there's quite a few games that you, with your familiarity, you can kind of just play off the cuff. And improv, I think, is the number one skill of a good GM.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree with that. I've done a couple of groups lately that I've GM'd, and one, I was definitely ready to get back to the player piece, so I was excited to let that go for a little bit. But I mean, I think the beauty of, and I did it in the D&D setting, but if you're sitting there and your players are gonna, again, if you're not railroading them, which I think Steve talked about earlier, can really hurt a D&D group. You're already improvising off the fly anyways, because you'll have this campaign and you'll be like, I really hope they go here, and then they're like, nope, don't care about that, and like, or they like kill off one of your NPCs, and you're like, that person was literally going to give you the coolest item in the world, now you can't have it, So I think that was the biggest skill that I learned, is improvising, and it actually really helped me be a player better this last campaign that I'm playing currently. Is that now I get to kind of know a little bit about like what is it like to be a dungeon master, and then really throw into that. Steve, there is a question from chat. Do you tend to become invested in your NPCs?
In my NPCs, yes, but not in the way that I own them. Again, with saying that I like to portray different folks, I do like to really ham up some of the NPCs, especially if the players take an interest in them. If you don't have a group that just gets mad at everyone that's contrary, and either threatens to kill them or just ignores them, or tries to talk them down. So, yes, very much. I haven't had too many NPCs that I've taken a liking to so much that I've let it interfere with what's going on with the game. The players should always be the focus of the game, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy a few of your NPC personalities as well.
Yeah, NPCs are one of my favorite parts about DMing, and I think because I could also it was a little bit of me being a player again, right? I think so much of it was, and Dr. Zero kind of mentioned this in chat. You put 20 hours into to setting up everything, and then 5 hours, 5 minutes it goes down the train because your group decided to kill your NPC. But I really do like to be able to be the person who kind of gets to play those different NPCs, and it gives me the opportunity to be a player a little bit in the campaign, which keeps me engaged. And I think that's hard too. Is as a DM, sometimes I feel like I'm a little removed from the fun that everyone's having because they've created camaraderie as oh, they're playing a character that has interaction with these characters. And I'm always the bad guy who throws a whole bunch of, frost giants at them. And then I'm the person who's killed all their characters and now they hate me, so it is a little hard sometimes. And so I do like playing the NPC to be like, oh, this person comes back. If you don't, again, I have a group that killed every NPC they interacted with. So that wasn't fun, but
well, it's always fun too that when the players do get invested in NPCs, you can kind of get a malicious glee out of killing them. Right. It doesn't work in most groups that I've experienced because, like I said, they don't get that invested in most of the NPCs. Are like, oh yeah, that stinks, and just move on. But sometimes it certainly does help, depending on what kind of story you're going for, or what kind of adventure. That once the players really dig in and like an NPC, you let them know that everything in the world, is can go.
Right.
So here's an idea. Since I don't think I will ever be able to GM in my life because I can't run things like that. But I read a few years back. I read a book from Robin Hobb, and one of the characters has what they call the wheat, right?
That's, yeah. Which book are you talking about, Gil? Is that the first series, the Assassins?
The Assassins, the King's Assassins, the whole thing until the Fits in the Fool series, all that. Yeah, all that series. So a game where people don't necessarily have magic, but everybody has the wit. So everybody would have to play with a animal.
Yeah.
Similar to a familiar, but not the same. You just have empathy and communication, and the animal can, a guy with a horse, a wolf, and things like this. And I wonder how it would be to run a game where everybody has basically two characters, a human and animal, and how complicated something like that would be. But I thought, that would be an interesting, fighting people there, trying to decimate the people of the wheat or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Actually, that's a great series as well. And I use that as an inspiration for the Druid I'm currently playing. That dragon board, clearly the dragon board's not in there, but the Druid has often shapeshifts into certain things, and I kind of play that. They take on the aspect of the animal. They kind of any preferences one animal. So yeah, no, I get that for sure. It's a great book, and it would be a lot of fun to have there. I think Unearthed Arcana right now has a Druid class that they're testing out that's focused on having like a pet or a beast that goes with you, similar to how the hunter class used to work a little bit as well. Anyone have any last? We're kind of running out on our time. Anyone have any last questions or thoughts about? We've just scratched the surface, obviously, about RPGs. Any questions for Steve about DMing, or Chris? Anything you're super looking forward to, or Gil? Anything you have to add?
I actually do have some, I was listening to Thread Raiders back a while ago, and they had a guest on, NPC Bree. She, is it like commonplace for a character, like someone coming in new, to take over an NPC character and play? Because I think what they did for her, so when she first started, is they gave her an NPC character and had that character develop as she learned how to play. I mean, that seems like a really neat idea. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
That's a blast. So right now we have an in-person group that has 2 tables. So we all get in the same place. We're a group of 10. We split into 2 groups of 5, DM and 4 players. And if a DM or a bunch of players can't play one week, the other DM we get that prep. We always talk like a couple days before, hey, are we still going? Who's going to be out this week? And if we know with enough notice, we just collaborate and we say, okay. So when I was DMing, if I had a couple people join us, I threw them in as NPCs. Or one week they were on a ship and a gambling ship, and so I made it into a little bit of a battle royale betting fighting ring. And these people played fighters. They were NPC characters that were just going to go into it, and they just played combatants in the little gambling ring. So yeah, I've done that. And then if someone sits there and keeps coming back to my table, I think that's a really cool aspect, especially if it's kind of like that pre-gen character sheet. Like someone's created you a level 1 character and you don't really know much of the specifics, so you ask the question, what type of character do you want to be? You ask someone who has a little bit of knowledge and they kind of give you a direction of, go pick this fighter, go pick this paladin. And then you play a pre-gen, it's some of the minutiae is picked out. That's how I started. And I got an opportunity then on my second character to feel a little bit more ownership, but it was a nice way to not get bogged down and overwhelmed by some of the basic kind of pieces. Like, again, what stats to pick or what proficiencies to have. It was just picked for me and I got to run with it. So it was nice. I liked it. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, I've done that as well. I've even gone back in the early days of D&D when you hired henchmen and hirelings. It was very common that if your character were to die, which again was also common back then, you would just play one of your henchmen that was already in the group rather than make a new character. In more modern games, I've done exactly what Chris just described, and I've even gone as far as having an NPC in the group at the table while I was playing, but what the party didn't know was there was a player not at the table that I would converse with, and it was actually their character. So I would present them with hey, here's what went down, how would you react?
Okay.
And it was just for a person who wanted to participate but could not make it as often. Or in one instance, it was someone who wasn't really ready for the kind of on the spot, what do you do now?
Right, creativity and innovation, kind of storytelling.
So it was more of an introduction for them to spend more time thinking about things. So I would kind of play as a surrogate of their character at the table, but let them make the major decisions.
Right, so give them some potential choices to think about in the future and roll off of it that way.
Like I said, and at least one, I had a great reveal when the group was playing with an NPC that was a recurring character for, I think it was over 8 months before I finally, the stars aligned and that player was able to make it. So I invited them to the table and they were kind of hush-hush about who their character was or what they were going to play.
Right.
And everyone was kind of shocked to find out that they had already been interacting with their character for 8 months.
Right. That's hilarious. I really like that. That's true. Gil, do you have any thoughts about that at all?
No, just go all in. It's never too late. It's fun, and mainly if you the kind of person who likes dungeon crawl board games and stuff like this, it's easy, I think, moving from one to the other. I guess that's it. Join a group. The worst that can happen, you won't like it and you don't play it again. I mean, it's not going to change much, right?
Right. And I think you hit it on the head, Gil, with we've talked about this now 3 shows in a row, that the tabletop board games and RPGs have started around like this in-person interaction, but now with the internet the way it is, and programs like Google Hangouts and Zoom and Discord, like you're able to talk to folks from wherever and have a game. And I think that's a lot of fun. Systems like Roll20 and Tabletop Simulator let you do all of these things in electronic format. So it kind of gives a whole level of access that you may never have had before. And a lot of people, a lot of these Twitch channels and stuff, again, have Discords that if you're super interested in and you see like us, we're talking about doing some one shots and things like that, hop in our Discord and just, we have a couple of people in there now who are creating worlds and wanting to chat about their worlds and get some players for their games. And so if you all are wanting to do that in an electronic format, this is the place to do it. So come join us. Go, Geek and Sundry. I don't know as much about them, but I'm sure they've got some avenues in which some people can hop on together. Just post it, similar to what Gil said, post in some chats and show that you're interested, and folks will find you. That's for sure. Okay, so that's going to end our show tonight. I do want to preface something new we're going to try is telling you all what we're going to talk about next week. Planning is a great thing. So our show for next week.
Until the planning goes wrong, right?
Right. Until the planning goes wrong. One of my hosts or panelists are going to show up and decide they don't want to talk about this topic. But no, we're going to start a little bit of a series that's focused on various game mechanics. We're going to get into some different type of board games for a little while, and we're going to just pull out some aspects. And what we've decided for next week is we're going to talk about worker placement games. And so there's a couple of examples, the Lords of Waterdeep, the Champions of Midgard, Stone Age, Agricola. Again, one of the games I just picked up, Pursuit of Happiness, is a worker placement. Find some ideas of games you like and that are kind of based around that worker placement mentality, and come join us next week. We're going to talk everything about worker placement. So on behalf of Gil, Chris, Steve, myself, and our producer Matt back at the mothership, as according to what Ryan typically says on Table Crashers, have a great night, and we're excited to chat with you next week.